What's up, everybody, and welcome to our very first JavaScript tutorial. And as I've mentioned, we're gonna be using Node.js to run our JavaScript. This doesn't really mean that you just need to have a Java. It doesn't really mean that you need Node.js. Just get an online compiler that is running or compiling using Node.js, and you should be fine. Or just install Node.js in your computer, and then you will be able to follow through this tutorial. We'll talk about the browser one a bit later on when we get more hands-on on HTML, but not now. Now we're just gonna keep it just a little bit separate since we haven't started talking about HTML. So I don't want it to be in a way that you need to know HTML before you get follow through this tutorial. In this tutorial, you don't need to have any prior knowledge of HTML or any language for that matter, because I'll be covering everything from scratch. Without any further ado, let's begin. So in this tutorial, right, we're gonna be discussing about variables. That's where we normally discuss, or that's where we normally start, right? We'll cover variables, and then variables will lead to a topic of data types. Then we'll end off with displaying our information on the console. We'll discuss more on the input a little bit later, because it's a little bit complicated with the console. So I don't want to confuse you or try to cover way too much concepts at the same time, because JavaScript is one of a kind. But we'll eventually get there, right? So what are variables, right? So that's one thing that we get to ask ourselves. But that's where we start in terms of our discussion as to uncovering or defining what a variable is. So a variable is the variables are containers for storing data, right? So every time when you have a data, you want to store that data inside a container, right? So that container is given a name called variable, right? And then I just mentioned something about covering data types, right? I said that this topic is going to lead us to the discussion of data types. So we are storing values, right, in a variable. So we're storing data, right? But this data that we're storing is more like values. These are values that we're storing inside our variable, right? And they come in different forms, and we'll just cover a little bit of them as we move further, and we'll get exposed to this different kind of data types. So the first thing that I want us to talk about before we actually go to describing or getting to define a variable, because unlike other languages as well, this word is a little bit different. If you've been following my Python, Java, what's that? C Sharp, all the C languages, C Sharp, and C++. You will see that there's going to be a little bit of a difference. But then I mentioned something that once you know a language, it's easier to transition to a different language, and that's what you're going to see as we move further. But let's just keep it in this tutorial and not try to talk about other languages, because as I mentioned, you don't need prior knowledge of any language. But then if you do have that knowledge, you can actually reference some of the things using the videos of a different language and uncover things on your side. But then if you're new, you can just follow through what we're going to do, because we're going to cover everything from the basic until the advanced level, right? So before you start storing data in a container, right, you want to name your container. So the first thing is to name your container, but there are rules that needs to be followed. Any rules broken will result in a very not so nice error messages on your program. So your program won't compile because of those errors, right? So rule number one. So a name or your name of your variable must begin with a letter, i.e. these are alphabets from A to Z, either in lowercase or uppercase. That's rule number one. Rule number two is that on the same point, we are still discussing about the beginning of this variable, right? You can begin with a dollar sign as well, i.e. that's the dollar sign. Ching ching, most people get to just say money when they see that sign, but in Python, no, in programming, it's just a sign. It doesn't mean money, but then, well, you can actually define a variable for money, right? And you start with the dollar sign and then say money. But yeah, that's basically it. So you can also begin with the dollar sign. So you can either begin with alphabet or you can begin with the dollar sign. Last but not least, you can also begin with an underscore, and that's an underscore, right? So those are the first three rules in terms of naming your variable, right? Onwards, you can have any characters, and we're gonna explore. I don't know why I don't have an explicit rule for that, but we're gonna explore that when we get to the naming of variables to see what we can and cannot do, right? So one of the most important rules is the one that we are at right now, that you cannot name your variable same as keywords. I know if you're new to programming, you might be wondering what are keywords. These are reserved words with special functions or special meanings, right? So they've already been defined to do a certain action, a certain function. So you can't use that to name your variable, because that will be confusing your compiler, or it will confuse whatever that you're using to run your program, because your program needs to be understood, right? And then when you run it and then it has some invalid syntax, your compiler will complain. Last but not least, they are case sensitive. So that means that if you name a variable with a capital letter and uppercase character, and you have the same variable name, but that character that is uppercase is lowercase, these two variable names are different, or are considered different and not the same. So be mindful of that, because most of the time you get to have a program running the way it's supposed to run, but you have that one small difference. The names are the same, but there's an upper character and there's a lower character. Maybe, for instance, you're defining a variable, there's an uppercase, and then you're calling or using that variable, but you're using it with the lowercase, and your program just pops up a message that no, you don't exist, because you declared a variable with the lowercase. So that's the one that exists. The one with uppercase does not exist. So basically, in terms of the rules, these are the rules. Now let's head on to discussing how one goes about defining a variable, right? So there are different ways of defining variables in JavaScript. This is where a little bit of a difference comes into play. If you are from other languages, or you are well familiar with other languages, just pay attention to this part. So in this tutorial, I'll only cover two, and we'll discuss it more in the next tutorial as to what makes this different from the other one. So for now, let's just explore the two, and then in the coming tutorials we'll get to discuss the difference. The reason why is I don't want to be bringing up many concepts at the same time, because we want to make sure that the foundation is built perfectly, so that everyone will be able to follow through as we move further, right? So let's just discuss the two ways of declaring a variable, right? So you can use a var keyword, and as I mentioned, keywords are reserved words, right? So you can use a var keyword or var keyword, or you can use a let keyword. We will talk more about this, the differences between the two, and the recommended one to use, or when to actually declare a variable like this. What kind of scenario would you want to have this variable? What kind of a scenario would you want to have this other variable? All right. Then let's look at the syntax, right? So the syntax is that you start with the keyword. So the reason why I have keyword is because before you declare a variable, you have to decide as to whether you want to use a var keyword or a let keyword. So that's why I just generalized it to just a keyword which is referring to either var or let. In this tutorial, there are still other keywords as well you can use. For instance, if you want to declare a constant, but we're not going to talk about this in this tutorial or talk about that in this tutorial. We just want to keep this one a little bit simple as possible and friendly as it can in terms of beginning to coding as well, because we want to also cover everyone as much as we can, or within our power, as to say. Cool. And then you have a variable name, and if you see my name there, it has a space. It's not supposed to have a space, and I think those were the one of the rules I'm missing from my list. Yeah, it happens when you type something and then you forget about other stuff, and then when you start talking about the stuff, you get to realize, oh, I missed something. But then wireless, we'll explore all this when we get to the coding, getting hands-on on coding. But there's not supposed to be a space there. Maybe there is not. For now, that's just where we are in terms of what we've discussed in terms of the slides, right? So let me just keep it more the way that we've been having, and then we'll rectify ourselves as we move further and do the application itself. Because when you get to apply, that's when you get to learn a lot of things. Oh, this is where the mistake was. Then you learn and you compile your own notes and get those notes written in your heart as if they are written on the stone, because you want to know. Mostly when it comes to variables, you don't want to be writing a program and the first thing you do is go Google, how do I declare a variable? No, those are the things you need to really know before, without Google, or no, not really without Google, with the help of Google, you have to know. But then when it comes to writing a program and you already are familiar with the language, there are things which you just can't be finding yourself Googling, because there are things you can understand easily. So it depends on how much effort you put into in terms of mastering some concepts. Once you are there, then everything becomes simple, right? But cool, that's the variable name. It follows the rules that we have just discussed. And then you see an equal sign, or an assignment operator, is to say, in terms of programming. So what we're doing there is that we are storing a value to that container, right? And then this value comes in different forms, and this value is part of the data types which we'll be discussing next. And then to end your statement, you end it with a semicolon. So just a little bit of an advice: if you are new to coding, do check out my Python tutorials, because JavaScript is more or less related to Python. And before you say anything, let me explain. So Python, the way it is, right? You just create a script and then you can just type coding from there as it is, right? Just as JavaScript, you just start coding as it is, and you can, when you declare a variable, right, and then you assign it a different data type, you can also assign a new value to that variable, but use what, a different data type value, right? That's why I'm saying that Python is a little bit related to JavaScript, but the syntax is just not so similar to Python to that extent, because Python doesn't have any, it doesn't use semicolons to define a statement. Once you go to the next line, that statement is done, right? But then in JavaScript, you have to specify with a semicolon, right? That's how you define a statement. Cool. So let's discuss the values that we get to have in when we are storing data to our container or our variable. We're not going to talk about many. Just as I've said, this is just the very first foundational video. So I just want to cover the most fundamental concepts, and one gets to go familiarize themselves with that, and then we move further and further as we go. And then after that, we're gonna start coding or doing our JavaScript inside an HTML document. So basically, don't just follow this tutorial only, also follow my HTML, which is going to be released. I'm going to release them on the same day, which is going to be Saturday, right? Yeah, Saturday, because Friday is C# and Java, then Saturday is going to be JavaScript and HTML. Do follow through, because what's going to happen is that along the way, we're going to stop separating them and go with just one, unless when there are more complicated concepts which needs to be covered individually, so then we'll get to that. Cool. So data types, right? So we're gonna start by discussing the text type. So these are just strings or a string, and then a string is just a sequence of characters, right? It's a sequence of characters. Basically, these are characters or alphabets organized in such a way that they create a meaningful word, right? You have ABC until Z, and then you just organize a specific, you choose specific characters, and then you organize that to create a meaningful word. And then we have numeric type, where we have a number, right? And then these are integers and floats. And we'll talk about integers later on, because it's quite interesting, because they have something called a big int, but we'll talk about that in the future tutorial, not now. And then with floats, these are just numbers with decimals, right? So an integer is a number without a decimal, float is a number with a decimal. And we're gonna follow or lastly discuss the true or false, or a binary type, which has only two values. So this is a binary type that has only two possible values, right? It's either true or false, right? And numerically, so a true is 1 and the false is 0, right? Cool. So let's cover the last bit of the slides, and then we're gonna go explore the coding side. So displaying data, right, or displaying information. In this one, I'm gonna try to play around with a lot of things, just so that we can fully understand something about this display method of ours, right? We're gonna also talk about this when we get to the HTML document in terms of displaying. So this is gonna be interesting, and I do hope that you guys are really looking forward to seeing JavaScript in HTML. So if I started with HTML or started JavaScript inside an HTML document, it was gonna confuse a lot of people. So my method of teaching is just gonna be starting off with them being separate, and then seeing how they get to be used in real world application. Just like with the other languages, right? If you are following through them, it's just, for now, it's just you learning the concepts, learning different concepts, and they are building up. And then we get to a point where we get to apply them in real world application. And then you get to see, so this is what I can actually do with Java. This is what I can actually do with Python. We're gonna get to do that as well. So displaying data, right? Let's just look at the syntax. So displaying data basically is just you displaying whatever that you want to display to the user. So we're just gonna use console.log, and then inside there we're gonna have a value, right? And that value can be of any data type: string, integer, boolean, any data type, right? And then you end your statement with a semicolon. So let's head over to our coding side. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna start coding this using my favorite text editor, Vim. But before that, let's just see if we can Java script online. Let's just see if we can try to have it online. I think they do have it there. There we go. So if you want, you can just go there, or actually, should we just, I think let's just do it here. That's how I started with other languages as well. Just started using a console instead of moving straight to Vim, because I don't want to confuse anyone. I think let's just start with this one here. And yeah, let's remove that. So cool. So if you see here, you can run Python, Java, Ruby, a lot of languages. For this case, we just going to use Node.js, and that's what we're gonna do. You do have JavaScript there. You can do that. Let me see. But I'm just gonna use Node.js for that one. Cool. And then declaring a variable, right? So when you declare a variable, right, we discussed that you can either use the keyword var or let, right? So let's start with var, and then we say name, right? And then we discussed different data types, right? We have a string, numbers, and integers, right? Floats and boolean. So let's start off with a string. So whenever you are assigning a value and you are assigning it a value which is of a string data type, you use double quote, right? And then in this case, I'm just gonna name this after our channel, Murex the coder, right? Then you provide a semicolon, right? And then we discussed displaying information, or basically let's just run first to see if there's gonna be any problem. There we go. There's no problems. What if I don't put a semicolon? Are we actually running this the right way? Control C. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, let's just try displaying this and see if it's gonna display. It's funny how I just started, or maybe let's just choose JavaScript and see. Okay, it's console dot log, and then its name. And there we go. So it runs, but it doesn't give me any errors. So does that mean that I can also choose not to have, or I can choose not to have semicolons as well? So I think let me also run this with my terminal, just to see if what I'm seeing is right or wrong. So let's just do this. So this is us exploring, and I love doing it this way because it makes it easier for someone who's new, that it's okay to make mistakes, to get errors, and to also explore, right? Mkdir, and then I have Java script, right? There we go, JavaScript, and then it's Vim, and then it's hello.js, that's JavaScript, and then we have variable, and then we have name, right? Name, and then we assign it a string, then it's morex the coda, and then it's a semicolon, and then it's console dot log, and then it's name. Save, right? And then we're just gonna move to our directory, then we have our file, and I'm just gonna use node.js to run my program. And there we go, it runs, right? Cool. So now let's remove a semicolon, right? Save, and then we run our program, so it runs. So let's rewind back to what I said, that a line or a statement is defined with a semicolon. Unlike Python, I think they are actually related in the way that I thought they were, just that I didn't think that they were that much related, but they are that much related. So it uses a line to indicate or to define a statement, right? So you can either have a semicolons or you don't, or you choose not to have semicolon. Let's see, there we go, and let's run. There we go. So you can choose to have a semicolon or you can choose not to have a semicolon. Please note that, since I mentioned something previously or at the beginning that it uses semicolon to end a line, let's just rewind just that part, right? So as we stand, a line or a statement is defined by just a line, so it doesn't use semicolon to actually define a complete statement. It uses lines, and that's it, right? It uses lines. That's what we have so far, right? I think let's play around with the other side. I don't know, I'm loving this compiler that they have online. It's so nice, it's so nice. You get to have your coding side and then you get to have your output side there. Cool. So that's what we have, right? What if I do this and then I say name, will it run? Oh yes, it does. So this is more or less just formatting, right? So you wanna indicate, okay, this is what I'm displaying now, right? So in this case, let's just say string data type, and then we display, right? So this is a string data type, and then we have our program there, right? Let's also try using an escape character. There we go. So an escape character is just a line. So it adds a line, adds a line, adds a line, and that's it, right? Let's also add it there so that we can separate our program. There we go. And there we go. That's our Murex decoder, and that's the line, right? Cool. So now, as I mentioned, just like Python, right, you already defined the variable using name, using var, right? Now I wanna give it a different value, which is of a numeric type. And then if I use the variable name as it is, and then I assign it maybe 60, right? And then I come here and I say console dot log, and then so it's already have an end line. I'm just gonna add one more, and then I say integer integer data type, and then I have name, and then end line, right? Let's run this and see what's gonna happen. So so let's not do it before we use it for the string. Let's do it after, and then let's return that. Yeah, then this gets to be nice. So we start by initializing a value, and then we assign it a string type, right? And then we get a string, and then later on we decide to override the value that is already stored in our container, which is a string, with a numeric type. So we provided 60, and then we have our 60, right? Cool. So let's also override it with 60.99. So this is dot log. So this is end line, and this is float data type, number with decimals, and then its name, and then its end line. So if we run this, there we go, we have 60.99, right? That's what we have. And then if we want, let's just do the boolean type as well. So name equals to true, and then it's console dot log, and then it's end line, and then this is a boolean type, name, end line, right? And then we run this, and there we go. So those are our three data types that we have just declared, right? Now let's change that and use let there. If I use let and I run, yeah, everything goes the same. So use the same way. Is that now what we need to uncover, or what we're going to uncover in the future tutorial, is discussing how do they actually differ, right? How do they actually differ? Cool. So we said a name can start with the $sign, right? If I run this, we have an error. And then if I use Node.js, what happens? We have an error. So we can't actually start with the $sign, right? We can't. Though the rules say that, but we cannot actually start with the $sign. So you see how we get to uncover things that we didn't really know. But apart from that, let me also check with my Vim as to what happens, right? So if I say var and then I start with the $sign, what happens? Does it compile? Does it not compile? It does not compile. Ah, I see my mistake there. So we almost made a mistake, a very serious mistake, and I do apologize for that. I hope if it was a live class, one was gonna be like, say, I think it's because you mentioned something that you define a variable and then you call a variable that doesn't exist because you're missing something. So we missed a $sign. Now everything should work properly the way that it's supposed to. You can use, so basically in terms of compiling, you can use Node.js or JavaScript. It depends on what you choose, right? There we go. So you can start with a $sign, right? And I do apologize for almost making that mistake of thinking that we can't start with a $sign, because sometimes you get to read something, right? Maybe you read it and then you fully, or you get to not really understand it. That's why reading and applying is very much important, because application, it confirms what you know. It confirms the theory that you have. Sorry. So other way is that you can start with an underscore, right? You can start with an underscore. Same problem. I have to go and update everywhere there, everywhere there, everywhere there, and everywhere there, and then I run, right? If I run, there we go, and we get to have our program running the way it's supposed to, right? So you can start with a letter, you can start with a $sign, and you can start with an underscore. Let's check something, right? What if I start with the £sign? What a £sign hashtag? Okay, let's just say hash so that we don't confuse each other. Cool. If I start with that, it's a problem, right? So you cannot start with a hash sign, right? So control Z, control Z, control Z, control Z, control Z, and everything should work as it is. So here's what I want us to look at, right? Just say define what happens, right, when you run the program like this. It's a problem. Then what if I just do this? It's a problem. And then what if I do this? I want to see something. It's a problem, right? So this in Python is a command, but in JavaScript it's not a command. So you see how you get to explore in terms of just exploring or getting to know a language. Don't limit yourself with just don't trick yourself with this thing that you have to be perfect in order to learn something. Nope, you don't have to be perfect in order to learn something. You have to have an open mind and to be yourself. Always be yourself and don't try to be someone else, and you will see yourself learning and you'll go far, right? So you cannot start with any other ways except using a use a what? Any letter from A to Z, dollar sign, and an underscore. And now, are we allowed to have numbers in between? Maybe I say 5, right? And then I'm just gonna copy this and paste there just to save time. There we go, paste there, and 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 then we run our program. So you can have any characters in between, I believe. Just like if I have a hash there, let's see, there we go, there we go, and there we go, and there we go. Run, and we have a problem. So we can't have a hash inside our variable, but we can have numbers in between. And that's one thing that we learned. So basically, if we are to actually summarize these rules or actually get to reach a conclusion, we can say that our variable can start with any character from A to Z or any alphabet from A to Z. And then it can also start with an underscore. It can also start with a dollar sign, right? And then in between, you can have any letter from A to Z, any number, right? Because we've just showed the number there. If one number works, then all numbers should work. Or we tried a different sign, which is a hashtag sign. We cannot involve a hashtag sign in our variable name. So basically that's it for this tutorial, and we will discuss more in the next tutorial. One thing that you might have learned in this tutorial is that you shouldn't be afraid to have errors. You shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. That's coding. When it comes to coding, you have to make as many mistakes as you can. All right? You saw how we almost made the biggest mistake of thinking we can't start with the dollar sign, even though we knew from the slides that we can start with the dollar sign. So you get to see that. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, but make sure that you don't make a mistake of misinterpreting something. If you get to read something and they say that you can also do it this way, then if you can't do it that way, then you have to search and wonder about as to why is something not going the way it's supposed to, right? So that's basically what makes a good programmer. You get to learn through trial and error, through making as many mistakes as you can, because with each mistake you get to learn something, you get to learn a very valuable lesson, right? Yeah, that's it for me. And I know I said I was gonna use Vim for that, but yeah, I just started with this new online feature, and I was like, no, let me just go for that. So the other thing is, in terms of coding, right? You're not really, or don't get to be limited to just using maybe an IDE and that's it. You can use any editor, any editor you want to code any language. Myself, I mostly code in Vim because Vim is the tool that I use mostly when I'm learning. It's way much effective for me to actually grasp and get comfortable with the syntax of any language. That's why I'm able to just move between languages without any problems or with ease. So just as yourself, basically it depends on how you get to depends on yourself, basically on how what you discover about yourself. If you find that yourself you are more of a person that is more of a an ID type, just explore different IDs and see which one is better for you. But also bear in mind that you're not really learning an IDE, you're learning a language, right? So when you master a language, you master a skill of being able to code that language. Anyway, so if someone was to just give you a text editor right now, you should be able to just write, and then they give you a program and they say solve this problem. You should be able to solve it. It's more like just having more of a whiteboard, and someone goes and say, okay, can you solve this problem without actually using a computer but writing it down? So you're going to just write all that. Although for me, in that case, they'll be laughing at my handwriting because my handwriting is not that good. But basically learn or aim to understand your concepts and know your concepts. I know there's some things you just can't really get to your head. I mean, there's so much to learn, and there's so much. So as a coder or as a programmer, you wanna learn the stuff that you must know, and just leave a room for things you don't really know, like things you've never been exposed to. Those are the things you get to go and search online and go, okay, cool. What is this again? Okay. And then you just get to understand, the whole thing, just get to understand everything. And then you start programming or start solving whatever problem that you're solving. That's basically what a programmer does on a daily basis. But then don't be that guy that's always on Stack Overflow whenever you have a program or a project. Don't be that guy. I'm not saying don't look at Stack Overflow. Do look at Stack Overflow. Like if you wanna just get to know other people's opinions, yeah, just get to see what they have, the discussion, the arguments that people get to have. It's nice to read all about all those so that you get to understand the kind of arguments that rise whenever it comes, especially with the var and the let. We're gonna get to discuss the how they differ, and then you'll get to explore or get to understand as to how things work, how things go. Like you just get to learn. Like it's I don't even know how to explain it, but then it's fun to always learn in a way that you're not just more focused on just coding, but also engage with other people. Also join online communities, coding communities, JavaScript groups. Just get there, explore, enjoy, be yourself, and yeah, be passionate about code. Actually, I mostly tell people that code with passion, because people get to ask me most of the time as to how do I get to do the things that I do, like how am I able, for instance, now they're asking me as to how do I manage to switch between these languages within a period of a week. So sometimes I do my recordings like same day, but not all of the languages though, maybe two per day, because I don't want to just record another one while I'm tired. It's not gonna fulfill the purpose, because you obviously don't want to be in a tutorial where someone is not as enjoyable as they're supposed to in terms of a video, like someone who's just talking while sleeping, and then boom, out of a sudden the guy is talking about something that doesn't even exist, or is talking about some weird things, you don't want to be in that kind of a tutorial, right? Because obviously this person is doom talking, and that's not the kind of tutorial you want. So yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, enough with me and talking. I know I talk a lot. Allow me to end this tutorial, and I shall see you guys next week, Saturday, same place, I guess. Enjoy, and I hope you'll enjoy.